We went glamping in a dome in New Brunswick recently. Glamping is basically camping with amenities, so this dome was more of a dome-shaped cottage than camping. And I've always thought domes were kind of cool, and this was a great chance to check one out up close. One side of the dome was made out of transparent plastic, which made for a window that covered a quarter of the dome's perimeter, and there's also a similar window at the top. The dome is of steel tube construction, basically steel tubes flattened on both ends and with a hole in the end and held together in a star joint by one bolt. This makes for really straightforward construction because otherwise the joints at the corners become really complicated. It's those star joints that makes it very difficult to build a geodesic dome out of wood. The whole dome was covered by a white plastic membrane with transparent parts for the windows. So the windows were essentially a slightly wrinkly plastic, so not the clearest of view, and they also couldn't be opened. And it's not like you could just put real windows in a dome, because with the geometry of it, square windows wouldn't really fit, and you couldn't just remove a member from the dome to make room for a window, because then the whole dome would go all wobbly. Also, with the wall sloping inwards, the entire outside of the dome is essentially a roof. So conventional windows wouldn't work there. They wouldn't be able to keep the water out, so it'd have to be some kind of a skylight window if it was conventional windows. But the company that sells these domes say they do have 4 windows for venting, and looking on the outside there was 4 places where there was a flap that could be opened with a screen behind it for some basic ventilation. Wasn't great, and the inside of the dome, that was all covered up, so that wasn't really usable. So I think the only ventilation is to open the door or just to run the bathroom fan or the dryer. It did have a dryer. So the whole outside of the dome is essentially covered in plastic, and the manufacturer of these domes says that they can last up to 15 years. And I've seen farm sheds and commercial buildings covered with a similar sort of plastic membrane. Just basically a simple steel structure with this membrane on top. So I guess it lasting 15 years is pretty credible, or they wouldn't be using it for that. Although I'm doubtful that the transparent part where the windows are would look nice after 15 years. On this one, the bottom edge of the dome just extends onto the deck it's built on. If you lift it up, you can see straight into the floor of the dome. And I wonder if at some point some creature is going to figure that out as a good way to get into the dome. But then again, just a creature with sharp claws is enough to go through the walls. And what if some sharp-beaked birds start pecking at the roof of it? Then you got yourself a leak. I guess then you have to tape it up or something. Of course, that could be complicated because you can't just climb onto the roof because it's all just one membrane. You just kind of step through it. But as far as I can tell, this dome has been there for at least 3 years, and I didn't see any damage to the covering, so I guess it's okay, despite my doubts. Now, this continuous membrane makes for a very effective vapor barrier for the dome, except normally you want the vapor barrier to be on the warm side, not the cold side, and this is New Brunswick, and they also rent these domes out in the winter, so you definitely have the vapor barrier on the wrong side of the wall. They put panels of rigid styrofoam insulation between the struts and taped those together to form, I guess, a sort of vapor barrier on the inside. But without conventional wood framing to attach it all to, this all seemed rather wobbly. And I doubt this is as airtight as the outside, so I'm pretty sure some inside air will get into the wall and cause some condensation against the outside membrane. And even though this was summer, there was a dehumidifier running the dome at all times, probably to cut down on humidity, and there's also a heater in the bathroom going the whole time, probably to cut down on condensation there. And we did see some condensation on the main window on the inside when it was cool outside, and then also condensation on the outside of the main window when it got warm during the day, because the mini split was blowing cool air straight against that window, making it cooler than the dew point outside. And that mini split is a pretty big mini split rated at 24,000 BTU per hour, and they just told us to leave it running all the time to maintain temperature, because that thin plastic window, I'm sure, is zero insulation, so that dome can gain and lose heat pretty quick. We also have a 24,000 BTU per hour mini split in our house, which is about 4 times the floor area, and that mini split is enough to keep the house cool through the summer and warm through most of the winter. So way more efficient than a dome like that, even though it's much bigger. And looking at the outside unit, the date of manufacture for that was August of last year, which suggests that that 24,000 BTU per hour mini split is actually an upgrade over a previous version. The dome is built right on top of an elevated platform, essentially a big deck, so the whole thing can't outlast the deck it's built on. And when it rains, the boards of the deck get wet and the water can seep along the boards under the dome. Of course, it could dry out towards the bottom in time, except they put spray foam insulation under the bottom of the dome. So if water does run along the boards, it will take much longer for those boards to dry out again. And reaching down along the inside edge of the dome, it did feel a little bit damp down there. But that part isn't really the fault of a dome itself. It could have been built on a separate round platform where none of the structural members extend beyond the membrane of the dome. And the insulation could have been placed on top of the decking inside the dome and then a subfloor on top of that, so you wouldn't need spray foam underneath to insulate it. And with the shape of the dome, the walls are of course all slanted inwards, so you can't really hang stuff from the walls, even if there was a good way to attach stuff to the walls, because there's no studs to screw into. The big curtain that was against the main window, when closed, ended up quite a ways away from the window just because the way it was slanted, and the curtain rod was of course quite a ways in from the edge because of that. There was a kitchen, a bath, and a loft built into the dome, and these of course were made with conventional vertical walls, not curved like the dome, and they weren't really attached to the steel tube members of the dome itself. And when the kids were running around on the floor and I was up in the loft, I could really feel it shake because the whole thing was just built on a deck, so not super solid like a house. The whole thing really makes me appreciate how simple, economical, practical, and durable conventional stick frame construction homes really are, at least compared to a dome. But the cool thing about renting a dome like this is you get all the coolness of a dome and you don't have to worry about any of the maintenance issues or longevity issues. You can just sit back and relax and enjoy the fire table or the hot tub. The dome was very well kept, it was very clean, more like a high-end hotel, and very well maintained, so any of these issues that I think are going to be issues with time had been dealt with or hadn't become issues yet. And my guess is the owners of these domes know what they're doing. The domes attract people because they're cool and they're not cheap to rent, so they probably already priced in the fact that these domes are not going to last like a conventional building and have much higher heating and cooling costs and maintenance costs. But yeah, you should go check those out. They're Balsam Ridge domes in New Brunswick. Now something I really wish I'd brought on this trip is my thermal camera. Because when you're curious about building temperature issues related to condensation and like where there's thermal bridging, potential cold spots leading to condensation, a thermal camera is the thing to have because it'll tell you all these things in an instant. And this is a perfect segue to this video being monetized in a way because Topdon is having an Amazon Prime Day sale for their thermal cameras, no less than 20% off of all the thermal products. And they provided me with some affiliate links for these products, this one, the other ones. This one being my favorite. I think it's the best deal. It costs a bit more than this one that plugs into a smartphone, but it's got its own display, so it's just handier to use. And then this one is nice because it's got a really big screen, but it costs more, so this one to me is the handiest one all around. So if you want to buy a thermal camera, right now is a good time to do it. And if you use my affiliate links, then I get paid a little bit for that too, because I'm not being paid to say this. I only get paid if people use the affiliate links to buy a camera.